Welcome to the Content Podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Hello, this is Shah, and I am co-owner at Voyager Craft Coffee.
Hey, Sam, how you doing? This is Daniel.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the Content Podcast.
Oh, really excited for you to have us on here.
Yeah. Now, I do have to ask, do you prefer Shamir or Sam, or how do you?
You know, that's funny because I'll tell you a funny story here. When I opened the coffee company, we started with farmers markets, and we were in a mobile food truck at that point, just doing specialty coffee. And these farmers markets had first generation farmers who had a really hard time, pronouncing my given name of Samir. And so at that point, I was like, I got to make it easier for my neighboring stalls so they can communicate with me. So I just went by Sam at that point.
Okay.
And at age 30, Sam started. So I think that either works. But
okay.
yeah,
Well, what do you
answer.
What do you prefer then? I mean, what would you want people to call?
Yeah, let's go Sam. Yeah, that's my coffee name world.
Okay, that's the Voyager name, huh?
Yeah, that's my Voyager name. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I do want to. You have some updates, and in the midst of COVID, you have opened a new location. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. And I could not be more excited to do this in a time when things are so painful on a deeply personal level.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, we really considered, before we did this was, okay, can we make this safe and sterile for our community and our team?
Yeah.
And I think once we checked both those boxes, the very next question was, do we think this is a value add for our city and our neighborhood?
Yeah.
We were planning on deferring the opening of this until after the shelter in place was lifted. But in retrospect, now that it's been extended, the order, and who knows what the future is going to look like, I mean, we're really pleased we had a chance to do this. And so, yeah, there is still one idiot expanding in this environment.
Yeah.
Voyager Craft Coffee is happy to take that mantle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and let's get into that in just a little bit. But first, let's start with the journey. Your first store is on Stevens Creek. That's the kind of like the flagship or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah, we call it OG store internally, but yeah, that's our flagship.
You call it which one? What do you call it?
We call it OG.
OG. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, even to open the Stevens Creek store, I mean, to move from doing farmers markets and kind of pop-up style to getting a brick and mortar, that was a bit of a risk, right? And
that, Daniel, going way back, that was definitely a big risk. You got it. Oh, I'll tell you what, the cafe is incredibly capital intensive. And so from a financial perspective, the one thing that, we initially, about over 4 years ago, we started exploring the idea of opening a cafe. Not that we had any illusion that this is like a big money maker and this is, the way to riches or anything like that.
Yeah.
We were both from San Jose, and we wanted to do something really neat for our city because we were both at a point in our careers where we were looking to do something meaningful and a little more different. Yeah. So we started exploring the idea of opening a community gathering spot in the form of a cafe. And it was essentially the equivalent of like home buying, like sticker shock, like, oh wow, that's what it costs. Those are the cost economics. And so it was a very, very easy decision to walk away from it all. And then one day we kind of circled back on this discussion, settled on doing obviously the lower risk food truck model.
Yeah.
And once we hit our stride, what that gave us confidence. All right. Well, I think we know what we're doing at this point. The reception's been great. Tons of our customers are repeats. We're getting more gigs. We're hitting our stride. Like, things look like they're sustainable in a better setting. And so the original location opened up. It was a coffee shop owned by another company back then. and they were looking to offload that location and that property.
Yeah.
Um, we were obviously a little hesitant at making a big financial commitment, but also making a big financial commitment in an era where, especially local to the South Bay, the conversation was moving more towards downtown and a more urban environment.
Yeah.
You know, and so we were thinking, boy, is this suburban auto mall area
Right.
really going to be sustainable, and is this going to look good 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Even though the focus has still moved towards downtown and this urban feel for the South Bay,
Yeah.
that location um, has been just incredibly golden for us.
Yeah, I mean, every time I go in there, it's packed. I mean, it just goes to show that. I mean, I think just even in the kind of like the suburban sprawl areas, something of quality, and there's people that are looking for that. So, in some ways, it's probably easier to be successful out there than it is kind of downtown in some ways, just because of the parking.
I do think you hit a very interesting point, or hit the nail on a very interesting point without maybe mentioning it fully. But at our core in the South Bay, being born in San Jose, I've kind of seen this my whole life. But
Yeah.
um, I've lived in a lot of other cities as well where this isn't the case. But we do have this commuter culture
Yeah.
mindset ingrained within us, where things like paying for parking, if it's validated, do not sound appealing.
Right.
Walking more than a block
Yeah.
once you park your car, those things are really not part of. They're not things people don't do, but they're
Right.
people things prefer not to do. And
Yeah.
so it's a very unique culture we have here. And I think one of the things that's allowed us to have a level of success there is being in tune to the city that we're from and understanding the dynamics that could lead to a successful rollout and operation there.
Yeah.
And I think that really gave us a good advantage in being confident and saying, yeah, like I get this isn't like from a specialty coffee perspective an ideal neighborhood, from just the look and feel of it,
Sure. Yeah.
but boy, we sure have really become a pillar in that area and neighborhood. And everyone there has been so gracious in welcoming us. It's been a very symbiotic, really nice relationship, and
Yeah.
one that we envision for decades to come.
Yeah.
That'll be our baby forever.
Yeah. That's great. So that kind of gets me to the next question that I want to ask you. Because when we did our interview with you back in 2018, um, you kind of said this thing about coffee is just the sideshow. So, meaning, I mean, that you are really trying to build community and bring people together and supporting people. And
Right.
how have you seen that happen there at the OG, and then also then moving into San Pedro Square Market, and then now moving to the one? I'm not. It's over by Santa Clara University,
Santa
correct?
Clara
Yeah.
University. Right.
So
Yeah.
talk about that. How are you seeing coffee as the sideshow, being great coffee, but also concerned about the people? How's that been expanding and morphing, and how do you keep that going?
Absolutely. You know, the very interesting thing about our job as baristas and working in the coffee world is a very unique position that we're put in terms of how exposed we are to our community. And I mean that
Yeah.
in a good way. How much of a platform we have to connect with people. There's a study that was done, and this was, I think, a few years ago. I'm going to say UCLA. I'm not quite sure on
Sure.
exactly what college, but the study, it essentially took an average American through the course of their whole life, and they tried to quantify how many interactions has this person had in their lifetime.
Wow.
So obviously there's a definition for what an interaction means and all of that. But okay, once you
Sure.
get past all of that, the number was around 80,000 interactions that
Okay.
someone has in a given lifetime.
Did they qualify that
Since
as
we
like does that mean just meeting somebody, knowing that their first name, or does it mean
exactly, it's
actually?
yeah,
Or
it
yeah.
is a loose definition. It
Okay.
wouldn't be something you would call an acquaintance or a friend, but it would be something along the lines of I know your name and I know
Okay.
something distinguishable about you as a person.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so information you can easily gather over even a 30-second conversation. But it
Okay.
does require a one-on-one interaction to be counted as one.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so it's a loose definition, but still, 80,000, even if you round that up to 100,000, that's a significant amount,
Yeah.
sure. If you look at the number of unique customers that have entered our OG shop since
Yeah.
inception over 3 years ago, we have exceeded 100,000 just at that
Yeah.
one location.
Right.
We've exceeded. I think we're at about 120 to 30,000 unique customers at that point,
Oh,
at this
wow.
point.
Yeah.
And that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely crazy. And that's a conservative estimate that's based on a lot of things that like I give like estimated lower than what the point of sale system says.
Sure.
But yet still, that's a crazy amount. And I
Yeah.
think the point there is to just let you know and to illustrate the power we have as far as touching people.
Yeah.
Uh, Short conversations, sure. And I think the sideshow that I talk about and that Lauren and I preach about what coffee is as far as what it means to us as a company, it's not to be dismissive of what we do with it.
Yeah.
We still care immensely about quality. Our standards are incredibly high. We
Yeah.
roast our own coffee, we source our own coffee. All these things are eminently meaningful to us. But ultimately, the power of making people a little bit happier and leaving them a little bit, their days a little brighter than when they came in, that is certainly the intangible goal
Yeah.
that we try and chase with every interaction. And so, because of the premium we place on these interactions and making them a quality interaction, making a emotional connection with each guest,
Yeah.
coffee automatically, even though we value it tremendously and it is our lifeblood as a company, it still becomes the sideshow because I feel like there's a greater purpose behind our presence here. And
Yeah.
it's also the greater meaning upon which we started this company in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about that. Then what is it in you? I mean, I mean, I completely agree with you. I feel like, um, people need to learn in many ways, have that kind of journey in their own life to find out that in reality, it's all relationships and it's all kind of about community, no matter what you're doing. If you're a plumber to a coder, at the end, it's really the people that kind of matter. Um, so for you, where did that come from? That began before you were doing the coffee. I imagine that's in you, right? So talk about that. How did that develop? That kind of like concern for the people, or was it just recognizing how well Disney does their training, and then just saying, "Hey, this is the way for success"? Because there are people who do that too. So, which is fine if
The,
that's what you're saying. That's cool.
sure
But
are.
I'm just wondering. But I
Yeah.
get a sense
Yeah.
just because you're
Well,
personal in many ways. Where is that in you? Where did that come from in your experience? That kind of idea of people.
yeah. Well, we're all a product of our environments and our interactions. And so, this is one of those things where, you kind of go a little bit further back in time to see maybe how you ended up here, sort of
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
But obviously, my co-owner and fiance, Lauren, she has a very, I think, maybe direct correlation between community and the way Voyager was set up as a reflection of the meaning of community.
Okay.
And so she worked in homeless advocacy in the state of Utah for many, many years,
Okay.
right after college and before she moved back to California. And so community and taking care of the people that live in these neighborhoods and our neighbors, that always took on very prominent meaning in her mind.
Yeah.
And so setting up Voyager the way we did is a really true reflection of, really both of our feelings. But I think that's her direct story there. And as far as me, I was actually um, in the army for a short time. I was
Oh,
injured and then
really?
I was medically chaptered out.
Oh,
This
wow.
was, right after college and all that. And during uh, uh, during the war, in Iraq. So
Yeah. Okay.
that was my journey. And I think the thing I really learned there is that, boy, you are your team. You are your team. I was going to say
Yeah.
you're strong and as weak as your team. No, but you are your team. Each member is the whole team. And I think there was no truer sandbox that I've ever seen even simulated that could hammer home that point more
Yeah.
than being in an environment where you're counting on others to, really take care of your entire life.
Yeah.
And I think the closeness that you develop there is very impactful and meaningful forever. And so, even though obviously these aren't the types of close relationships you would build over the course of any kind of interaction with a customer, the point still is that you treat them like your family and your own blood, and
Yeah.
that's how you engage with them. And so, I think that was a very easy decision for both of us to understand that, okay, what we value most is something far beyond things we can touch or feel or count. And they came down to the human component of it, and influencing people in a positive manner
Yeah.
became, if you will, like our higher calling as a company.
Yeah. Totally. Now, so then, so what I'm hearing you say is, so you run your business like a military unit.
Oh, man, you know what?
No, I don't see you being like a drill sergeant. But how does that affect you? Then how is that being in? Well, first, yeah, tell me about the decision to go into the Army, and then about the injury that what happened there.
Oh man, well, this was it almost feels like a different lifetime, right? And
Yeah.
what's funny is I'd say less than half my staff. We have about 35 staff members. I'd say maybe about 6 or 7 know know I was in the army, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny. Yeah. Well, anyway, but
So you don't have them all line up and check their shoes and all that kind of stuff, right?
The funny thing is, no one would believe the story if they just looked at like our staff and how loose and how happy and free they are, so
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
much autonomy they have.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting dichotomy there. But no, the decision back then was grounded in some sort of like an I think youth idealism, which I think I had taken upon, and I think it was based upon the concept of, well, okay, before I get into that, my brother actually joined.
Yeah.
And I think he did it because he exited college right after, I think he's my older brother. So he was graduated a number of years before I did from college. But it was around 2001 to when there was that
Okay.
big dot-com boom, bust, I should say, and recession. You couldn't find gainful employment. I think he just wanted to kind of do something a little more meaningful in his life.
Yeah.
That's the sense I got. And so one day he's like, "Hey, mom, dad, hey, I'm joining the army." And it was like the most foreign thing for like a, really second generation, like immigrant family to kind
Yeah.
of, my parents, to hear that. They're like, "Whoa, what's going
He was
on?"
supposed to be a doctor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And come on now, I'm just letting you know, being of Southeast Asian like ancestry and descent. I mean, there are some expectations around like
Right.
what your professional career ought to look like. It's definitely not the right thing, but that's just how it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and he had all the good grades and everything. He had all the checkboxes, right? He could do whatever he wanted in a professional career, but he picked this, and I think he kind of did it out of a spirit of rebellion, a little bit, like, hey,
Oh,
I can do
okay.
whatever I want. And
Yeah.
I think that kind of that like equity like rubbed off on me a little bit, right? That kind of his I think mental uh state about what is possible for him
Yeah.
opened my eyes to, right, I'm not confined to following a script. And so it was a unique challenge, and we love challenges. And so when he took it on, I said I could do it too. And then I formed this like little idealistic vision of what this would look like. And I think well, no regrets at all.
Yeah.
Obviously it was a really weird time in American history, but
Yeah.
lots of things we could have done right, or a lot more correct than we did. But
Sure.
yeah, no, it was great. And then obviously he did 3 tours of duty overseas, all
Wow.
successful and all with perfect health back and great. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
So for me, I was injured, and
So
for
you were in
one of my
combat,
deployments.
injured in combat, or how was that?
Right. Yes,
Oh, wow.
exactly.
That's
Yeah. It
intense.
wasn't an actual live fire situation, but it was in a deployment. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a back injury, and those don't heal well. So that's kind of how that went.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think the lessons around morale, teamwork, team building, and caring for each other, those are the ones that really still convey with me, all the years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you then bring? What's kind of like your you and Lauren's kind of like aspect of how you train people and lead them in order to kind of keep this people focused and community aspect for Voyager going?
I think we lead with a lot of empathy and compassion. I think those are two words we're really, you know, I guess champions of, if you will.
Okay.
And I think we try and impress that upon all of our staff members is not like don't follow a script when you're talking to someone. That's not really ever what we train on. I think it's letting them know that the things we just talked about, the fact that how connected we are in today's age and how important it is to have physical interactions with people and emotional connections with people face to face, the power of that and what it means to our community. And I think we just let them know, like, if like imagine if someone was trying to make your day, brighter and better,
Yeah.
uh, in all of your interactions. How cool does that feel, on a human level?
Yeah.
And, is that something that we can do for all of our guests and all of our customers who come through our store? At some ways, a bit of an unattainable goal, really. You can't ever have a 100% hit rate, and we
Sure.
recognize that. But I think the idea is that if we lead from our hearts and if we try and treat people with respect and empathy and compassion, then I think we've done a pretty solid job for one day's work.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you say empathy and compassion, um, what do you mean by that? What's in a kind of like an example? Give me a parable of
Yeah, well,
of how you work that out.
especially in the specialty coffee world, I think they're somewhat painfully and fortunately easy to come by. Where you have a customer who comes in and says, "Hey, I'll take a caramel macchiato."
Yeah.
And I think, we've all kind of, either we've heard about these stories if we're not working within coffee, but if we're working within coffee, these are all too obvious and very easy for us to relate with. But, it's like, so what do you do in that instance, right? I mean, obviously your first inclination is, no, we can't do that. But I mean, there's a way you can connect and communicate over the fact that that's not a kind of drink we make. But
Okay.
what
Yeah.
else can we do that can satisfy them and that can actually make their day a little bit better?
Yeah.
And it can also kind of give them a feeling and understanding that, we're doing what we can to accommodate them no matter what the request. That's a very easy example of empathy and compassion in action.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Okay. So now let's move to your journey from opening up. Uh, Give me a little bit of the timeline so we can kind of get a space of it with the Santa Clara University. It's on the Alameda. Is that the
That's right. Right.
yeah?
Exactly.
So the new one's on the Alameda, and what's kind of like the cross street, and what's the address so we can just get that
Yeah,
in?
it's right where the Alameda forks into El Camino, but it's on 2221 the Alameda, and it's about 1 block south of the university. It's like right from our front door, you can see the main Santa Clara University sign. So
Yeah,
it's a neat location.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's I mean, what a perfect location, right? College students and coffee seem to be very kind of successful. Busy street.
Except there's no college students right
Right,
now at
exactly.
all.
So you sign the lease, you start doing the build out, changeover, going in there. What's kind of like the timeline of that? And then when did COVID hit? And then what was your kind of mental, um, emotional state when that all went down?
Right. Well, this all happened around the same time we decided to open our second spot in San Pedro Square, literally like a month or
Oh,
so
okay.
apart.
Okay.
It was very quick succession type thing. And obviously for the sake of our business and our team and to make their transition and lives easier, ours too, we decided to give San Pedro some breathing room
Yeah.
and the time it deserves to just kind of mature as a location. And hold off on opening the Alameda until we were hoping like December, January. Now, given the usual issues
Yeah.
you have around permitting and construction and inspections.
Yeah.
Inevitably, your date gets pushed back a little bit. So ours did.
Yeah.
And ours got pushed back to what we were thinking would be the last week of March.
Okay.
And the shelter in place, if you
Yeah.
recall, was especially in the 6 county area, before the whole California shelter in place was issued on March 13th, I
Yeah.
believe. And so it was literally the weekend. It was on a Friday, I think, where we heard about the shelter in place. But on that Saturday or Sunday, we weren't quite sure which day we were going to announce our grand opening,
Yeah.
March 30th,
All
free
right.
coffee all day,
Yeah.
come one, come all. And, you know, once the shelter in place hit, those plans all went out the window. And so it was a very unique timeline for us and a time frame for us to see. And then now we have to figure out, what do we do with this place? And that's where all these conversations were occurring around. Okay, we'll just kind of hold off. I think that was our initial
Yeah.
reaction
Yeah.
until the shelter in place is lifted. But then, yeah, we went ahead and did it anyway in early, I guess, middle of April.
What's kind of like your offerings, or what have you changed? Obviously, I mean, people can't come in and sit down, and you have to do to
Yeah.
go. But what's some of the other things that you've been kind of thinking to adjust towards this situation?
Right. I I I think we've always prided ourselves on being in tune with our community and what their needs are. So one interesting thing that we that happened on March, I think 13th itself, it was that well, or I think it was a few days later perhaps, but anyway, it was right after the shelter in place was announced. We noticed a person come in with an order for like five of the same drinks. I think that's what it was. Five iced whatever coffees. And, we asked her, oh, yeah, so, you're taking this back to your family or friends. And she said, no, these are all for me. I don't want to leave the home
Oh,
for the next week because, I'm a little afraid.
oh wow.
And we thought, yeah, you know what? You're right, but that's going to be a little tough to carry, these five drinks. So in the back, we had these growlers, these
Oh yeah.
half-gallon amber jugs, which we were going to serve bulk version of the bulk amounts of kombucha in,
Yeah.
and we were about to get kombucha kegs a week later. And so we purchased those in advance of getting the kombucha kegs. And we said, hey, just take one of these growlers, just put
Yeah.
it in your all fits and, great. Just bring the growler back when you can. And therein, there was one giant seed we just automatically planted without realizing it. And we thought,
Yeah.
hey, why don't we just put growlers on the menu,
Yeah.
for all of our drinks? And so, what's funny is we did that same day, we posted that on social media and sold about 40 of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the month subsequent, I think 6 weeks since, we've gone through about close to 1,000
Awesome.
growlers and refills as well. And so I think being adaptable to the environment, that's one example of things we did.
Yeah.
We also um, have some customers who are a bit elderly, and they told us that, hey, I guess I'll see you in a few months from now or a month from now. And we thought, oh man, that's just heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
so we uh, contracted with a food delivery company, Caviar, to start offering our coffee on a delivery basis.
Yeah.
It's really not a profit, or moneymaker
Sure.
for us.
Yeah.
Take a big chunk of your revenue right off the top. At best, it's like a revenue neutral type of endeavor.
Yeah.
It does make us more accessible to the people who still want to support us and still want to get good coffee. And so, but automatically, that makes it a worthwhile endeavor for us.
Yeah.
So, those are some examples of tactically like how we changed our operations and our menu.
Yeah.
Now, aside from the more invasive things like not letting people in the shop, dealing with this crisis.
Yeah. So then, as a business owner with three different, basically community gathering places, eh, what's going to be the long term impact for you on your business, from your leases to your employees? How does that look?
Right. Well, it's a tricky question. And if you think about it, it's yes, it is three leases we're committed to for years.
Yeah.
from now. None of them are month to month or ending soon,
Yeah.
nor do we want to. We're committed to these places and these
Yeah.
communities. We're also leased in Palo Alto for our roasting operation. That's
Yeah.
where our roastery is. Now,
Yeah.
again, that's not a community gathering spot since it's not open to customers, but still an expense.
Yeah.
And we have a team of 35 people, and
Yeah.
we would have been at 50 had things not really happened the way they did with the
Right.
pandemic.
Yeah.
With the third shop open at this point and presumably thriving, we would have been we were planning for 50. Um, and so that really, I mean, that's really just like a punch to our gut when this
Yeah.
thing obviously happened. Aside from the human, you know, uh, like element of suffering and pain that this thing has caused a lot of people on a much
Yeah.
deeper level than it has us, right? I'm not
Yeah.
first to say feel sorry for us. No, I mean, from a business perspective, it was really gut wrenching, right? To
Yeah.
kind of figure out how do we do this. We have people who are getting health insurance. We subsidize that. We've been offering health insurance ever since we had 11 employees. It was
Yeah.
the first things we did when we could afford it. Um, and there's about a dozen people who get insurance now. They need hours. They
Yeah.
need to work a certain threshold to keep qualifying for it. There's money that we pay towards their premiums as well. So we need to
Yeah.
monetize things we can to keep getting more revenue and income so we can support them. There are goals that we have as a company of expanding maybe into a fourth location. Is that possible now? So all these
Yeah.
questions, they
Yeah.
all came at once, and we had no good information or basis in historic context to draw on
Right.
and see what the right path is. But what does the future look like? I think it's going to be a very different version of normal for a while. I
Yeah.
think the one thing that I'm really proud of is how we as a company have come together and adapted to these
Yeah.
environmental changes. And I think built a foundation overnight, really, and pivoted our entire business model to accommodate it. And I think whatever does happen, we will be really well suited to capitalize on and figure out how to succeed in. We've done it so far, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The future is going to definitely be different, Daniel, and I don't know how that will actually play out, but
Yeah.
we'll be here to adapt with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes Voyager coffee different and unique? How does it set apart? What's some of the elements?
Yeah, that's a tough question. You're asking me to sell ourselves, and I'm really bad at that. So
Yeah. Right.
I know, really,
Well,
I,
then just tell me
I,
why you like it. What's the flavor that you?
all right, okay, fair enough. All right, I'll give you two things. Two things, and I've been told by other people I should mention these two things, so I'm going to do it. But
Okay.
uh, I guess maybe the first thing is we do pride ourselves on being authentic and genuine in our interactions and in our actions as both people and as a company.
Yeah.
And so what that means is sometimes you can easily look past the veil, right? If you will. There's no facade. This is just kind of who we are as people and who we are as a company. We don't try
Yeah.
and position ourselves in the marketplace to look and feel a certain way. I do think that in South Bay specifically, we've got a very interesting demographic here, and it is so diverse, unique,
Yeah.
and different than a lot of these like cities, which people say, "Oh, Portland's so cool. Look at San Francisco." Okay, those cities all have their great, amazing amenities, but we've
Yeah.
got the diversity that none of them can really touch.
Yeah.
And it's an authentic diversity that I think values people at like their face value, and I think we've been able to resonate within the community quite a bit as a result. Just word of mouth and in-person interactions have
Yeah.
given us the confidence that we do things a little bit differently, and based on just our own market research into how other shops do things, we definitely notice a different atmosphere and a different ambiance and a different kind of conversation that occurs between the customers and the staff.
Yeah.
And so we pride ourselves on that. I think that's definitely one thing that we do differently, and that we would have hoped it came through, and it has. The second thing is, I think, drawing back upon that comment of diversity, and the demographics we have here. Uh, we feel like, um, well, based on at least what we've seen and surveyed across the marketplace back when we first opened, we
Mm-hmm.
thought specialty coffee was stagnating to a certain extent in
Hmm.
terms of innovation within the menu offering.
Yeah.
I think we felt like we could kind of harken back to the craft cocktail type movement,
Yeah.
draw some inspiration from that time, and figure out how do we make things a little more unique and approachable for a layperson, perhaps, who's not so much into the traditional specialty coffee offering.
Right.
And so yeah, I always go back to the a simple question: will my parents find this thing appealing? And that's a weird thing
No,
to
that's good.
ask. Again, like there's no hype and veil here. All right, this is who it is. This is who we are. So I was like, are my parents going to enjoy this drink? And they don't have to. But do they find it somewhat appealing? And can I bridge the gap between what they're used to drinking at Starbucks with something way higher quality,
Yeah.
handmade in-house? All of our serves are, and unique. It never been offered at another coffee shop before. Can we hit all those boxes?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, we put that kind of drink on the menu. So they're challenging, they're innovative, they're different, they kind of push the envelope a little bit. They're not for everyone, and I can see how it's you know well I can see how these kinds of things can be looked at a little more appealingly by a South Bay resident than an offering from, say, a very specialty craft coffee shop in San Francisco that does like an 8 drink menu. And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It's just we're a little different than that.
Yeah. So, what are you looking forward to in the next few weeks and month and even into the next year?
Our entire reason behind expansion as a company, and especially expansion into roasting coffee, was so that we can source our coffee directly from the farm level.
Yeah.
And there's a huge discrepancy in the cost economics for at the farm level in terms of what they have the pricing power for in terms of selling their coffee, and in terms of what we can actually pass along to our consumers in the form of a brewed beverage on our menu. It
Yeah.
is absolutely astounding, like what that gap is.
Yeah.
And we've always like wanted to feel closer to the farm level because we do genuinely, as much as we talked about coffee being a sideshow and all that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it is an agricultural good and a
Yeah.
product that comes from a lot of labor and hard work.
Yeah.
And we recognize that since we first entered the coffee industry. And we've always been attuned to trying to do things that are most sustainable and profitable for people at the farm level. So we pay more for our coffees. They're sustainable. They're generally, certified for some kind of fair trade or organic or some kind of certification that does
Yeah.
convey and pay extra money for that. And now that we had the scale with 3 shops and we were about to kind of hit wholesale for tech companies and other cafes and all that in a really big way starting this summer. Now, obviously, all that's been pushed back, but still, now that we do have this platform, with that comes the obligation of doing a little bit more for those people at the farm level. So
Yeah.
things like trips to origin, where the coffee comes from, building relationships with farmers and co-ops at that farm level,
Yeah.
and then buying directly from that, cutting out the middleman and letting them pocket all those extra dollars. Those are the things I'm really looking forward to when
Yeah.
things do ease back into some kind of normal.
Yeah. I'm somewhat surprised, but there actually are people who are looking to even open more coffee shops and cafes these days. Maybe not right today, but in the future, I
Right.
know a few people that are talking about it and have been doing pop-ups and
Absolutely.
different stuff. What's some advice that you would give them as somebody who's looking to get into this industry? What would be a couple lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, there's innumerable amount of lessons. And
Yeah, right,
I
right,
think, I think I think you always write think about writing the book of do a certain thing, and then there should be a book of how not to do a certain thing.
right.
And
Yeah,
so
totally.
I think we could definitely author that. But no, I do think that at a basic level, um, you've got to care about, I think, at least one of these two things immensely. Uh, connecting with your community, and or really ideally and um, caring about your product immensely. Because as someone once told me, a lady by the name of April Kavar, who's Ritual Coffee up in San Francisco, I think she's still there actually after all these years. She once told Lauren and me when we were looking to enter the coffee business, please don't do it for the money.
Yeah.
And she said, write this down. This is the only thing you take away from this conversation is that please do. This is the point. Don't do it for the money. There is something beyond that dollars and cents in revenue that you want to chase. And if you don't have that kind of commitment, then I think that makes it tough to be successful within this industry in the long run. And so we've taken that to heart. And I think from what I've seen elsewhere, the people and the companies who live that kind of value, they tend to do really, really well. And so maybe that's the only advice I would ever dare to give someone unless they ask for something more specific.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it seems, it's kind of funny. I mean, I love doing the interviews with the magazine and also now starting to do the podcast, but I love just always kind of seeing that theme come up that, especially for artists and entrepreneurs, that it's like, I'm really doing it because I love doing this, right? The money's not the goal. Of course, everybody, especially once you have 35 employees and, that becomes a weight that you want to take care of. But at the heart of it, you're doing it because you love it and you want to be in this industry, right?
Right. And maybe I left that point somewhat incomplete because I definitely got the point you're mentioning. I guess maybe an extension of what a consequence of doing it in that correct manner. Well, from my opinion, correct manner, I guess, for what it's worth. But is that the money will come. Like, don't chase it. It'll chase you if you do the right things the right way. So as a company, we've never looked at our like monthly or annual income or net income as a good barometer of success. We really don't. In our management meetings, we de-emphasize those kinds of discussions, and we look more at the feel, the mood, the reviews, the conversations, the emails that come in, positive, negative, and we learn from those things. And we hope that we tweak the right levers and we make the right adjustments. Monetizing things will become the easiest part of what we do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time and appreciate what you guys are doing. And congratulations on the 3rd location. And we look forward to the 4th, 5th, 6th, and other states, right?
We should stop where the one hand ends. 5, I think.
Yeah, okay. 5. That's good. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll be talking to you soon.
You got it, Daniel.
Okay,
thank you so
Sam.
much. I appreciated your time.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Goodbye.
Find out more about Voyager Craft Coffee at voyagercc.com and on Instagram at Voyager Craft Coffee. In addition to publishing Content Magazine, SV Creates also provides tools and resources for artists and arts organizations. From time to time, we'll be checking in with Alyssa to find out what's going on. Hey, Alyssa, how you doing?
Hey, Daniel. I wanted to tell you about a free webinar we're offering on June 9th at 10 a.m. called Scenario Building and Contingency Planning. We're offering this in collaboration with Fiscal Management Associates and presenter Roxanne Hansen. Roxanne will give us scenario building tools to help make adjustments to our strategic plans and budgets. For more information and links to register, go to our website at sbcreates.org.
Thank you for listening to the Content Podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag and subscribe at content-magazine.com. This episode's music is by Sakura. You can follow her on Instagram.